Thank you. Thank the organizers for inviting me here to give me the opportunity to highlight some very important questions that has arisen through our research in Alaska. So, as we've heard today, archaeology has a long history of engaging with environmental and climate data, reconstruction path environmental change, and all this has been very central to archaeology since very early on. So archaeology has a very big role to play in coming period of climate emergency by showing how human cultures have responded to past climate change, and also highlighting the variability in behavior, the flexibility of past societies, and the resilience. And this is also something that we have listened to today. But there's also the possibility for archaeology to be very effective in mediating the socio-cultural impacts of climate change onto communities today, and not least onto descendant communities. So we think that archaeology also has a very significant role to play in public perceptions of climate change more broadly. And the importance of archaeology is not only related to the past and our understanding of the past, but also very much related to the present in creating resilience and identity and taking this into the future. So I will talk about archaeology and the reality of climate emergency, especially for politically disenfranchised and climatically vulnerable communities. My perspective is come mainly from Alaska, but I think this is a much bigger discussion than that. So just, sorry. So, despite this, I will start in Scotland, where I come from, University of Aberdeen. Incidentally, Scotland was the first nation to, in April 2019, declare climate emergency. Other nations were soon to follow, and in November the same year, the European Parliament did the same. So this would warrant, one would expect, the climate to be on top of the agenda for these nations politically. But unfortunately, with the result in hand, this is not the case. Oil companies are currently making record-breaking profits and have extensive expansion plans that are already well in advance. So these things are not only supported, but also heavily economically subsidized by political leadership. So climate emergency is, it would seem, is still somebody else's problem. Now, this can maybe come from a feeling of physical distance. This is not happening to us so much here and now, but it also comes from political, economic, and social privilege that basically insulate us from the immediate effects of climate change. Now I'm going to move into an area of the world where these privileges are not insulating people from climate change effects. Here in Alaska, the effects of climate change are very real. The circumpolar region is warming at more than twice the global average. So climate change here is leading to decreasing permafrost, more unpredictable weather conditions, coastal erosion, and so on. Northern Arctic sea levels are also at a historic low. And as we heard, sea level rises just going to increase as well. So the ecological changes here are imminent, and infrastructure are already under threat. Now we're going to focus on the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta in southwestern Alaska here. This is one of the largest deltas in the world. It's also the homeland to the Central Yupik people. This is the largest indigenous group in Alaska, around 22,000 people living in this area are Yupik. Many of these live in communities that are still very heavily relying on subsistence and more traditional ways of life. So as you can see in this picture, this is a very, very dynamic environment. It's a treeless tundra. It's made up of marshland and basically water. Permafrost is important for basically keeping the infrastructure. And now with melting permafrost, communities are having huge problems with roads, with airstrips, with houses basically shifting on the ground, with other types of infrastructural problems as well. And this also comes with large ecological changes. So according to a 2004 report from the US government, Government Accountability Office, 184 of 2013, or 86% of Alaska Native villages will experience some level of flooding and erosion as the impacts of climate change intensifies. So in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta today, climate change is not only threatening environmental resources, but infrastructure and actually society itself. So these people have been described as, now there's some, the world's first climate refuge. And several Yupik villages are immediately threatened by erosion and by environment changes. Some of them have already been forced to relocate. This is the village of Nutok in Southwest Alaska. They have been facing extreme erosions related to permafrost degradation for years. So now there's efforts to move the whole village to a new site called Metervik. Of course, this moving a whole population comes with a lot of problems, but the goal is to complete this relocation by 2023. And this is only one of the villages that are putting action plans into moving due to these changes. This is a quote from one of Anne Finnep Riordan's books. It's come from Yupik elders, highlighting the reciprocal relationship between the environment and the people, the communities. The world is changing following its people. This also highlights the human environment division, or the cultural nature division that we may recognize it as well as a Western scientific construct. The separation of human environment is not the reality for many indigenous people, including the Yupik. Instead, they have a much more entangled and holistic view of the worldview, ontology, where people are very much part of the environment, and the way people act towards each other and towards other entities in the environment will have direct effects on what is happening in the world. So there is quite a big lesson to be learned here, and highlighting this different way of looking at the world that is ours, that we all share. So we're on the coast of the Bering Sea, where in 2007, people from the nearby village of Quinhagak began finding artifacts that have been washed away from the eroding soils of the tundra edge of the tundra. So Karniktjuk Inc., who's the Angsa Village Corporation of Quinhagak, owning this land, invited archaeologists, more precisely Dr. Rick Knecht, to come and investigate what was going on. And this led to a large collaborative community-based project between Karniktjuk Inc. and the University of Aberdeen. So this project is now on its 12th, 13th year of research, and we have undertaken 8 excavation seasons on this site. You can see its location in the middle slide there. It is on the very, very edge of the tundra. In fact, since we started working here in 2009, between 10 and 15 meters have disappeared along the coast from where the site was located. The excavation blocks from the early years of excavation, 29 and 2010, are now entirely gone. So this is how acute this problem is. Now, the Quinnahook population of Quinnahook is about 700 people. Almost all of the residents here are native Alaska Yupik. The village is quite marginalized from a political and economic perspective, from kind of central US perspective. And many people in this community lives under poverty levels. A very important aspect of living and making your life in this village is subsistence practices, which very much links also to traditional ideas, traditional ways of life, connected to land, and it's a very, very big part of the cultural identity of the people living here. So loss of land is also linked to fears of loss of culture, loss of identity, loss of being Yupik. So inviting archaeologists to work in a community like this is very quite unusual. But the climate change and the coastal erosion really prompted the community to make this unusual move and actually excavate this site. It's been in collaboration with the community since the start, and all major decisions archaeological decisions have also been taken together with the community. Locals call the site Nunachlek, which means the old village. And according to kind of tradition, this type of remain is not supposed to be touched. So there's very little Yupik archaeology done so far. But since, with the full support of the elders in the community, this decision was made. And the explicit wish from community leaders and elders was that archaeology would work as a reminder for young people of where they come from, who they are, and the importance and impact of their own long history as a people. So for our kids to never forget where they are from. So this type of engagement has been very important from the project from the very start. As you can see here on the map, Quinnahook is quite remote. The only way to actually get there is by planes. You can't drive there or anything like that, which also means that people are very dependent on resources from the outside to have like a modern type life. This is the erosion edge where we have the site, and this is an excavation picture from the site, just to give you an idea how close we are to the sea. So the Nunalek site, it's a semi-subterranean sod house complex, and including its exteriors as well. The dwelling seems to have occupied for a period of up to 300 years, with the densest occupation levels dating between 1570 and 1675. So we're in late pre-contact period. The site has been basically frozen in time in permafrost. So it has a very exceptional preservation of organic material. We have organic material including basketry made of grass, which is really, as you all know, quite unusual in archaeological context. So far, we have over 100,000 items, catalog entries in the collection. And here are some examples. So the knowledge that we have of the Yupik pre-contact past has really increased a lot with this project. But most importantly, it also has been embedded into the community itself and into their understanding of their past and their understanding of themselves as a society. And including the young people, especially in the archaeological excavation and having them meet the archaeological material, which is really the key here, has also built capacity in the community to engage with and to take care of this material. It's also led to a kind of revival and reinvention of old practices and traditional culture. A lot of young people have started carving again. For example, the dance group that had been resting for almost a century in Quinag has come back and are now performing traditional Yupik dances and so on. So the archaeological excavation has helped create a cultural engagement and also led to a type of cultural resilience that can actually help isolate this community for the changes that will happen in the future, inevitably with climate change, as a reminder of who they are and what they where they come from, as the elders have expressed at the beginning of this project. I am seeing now I'm starting to run out of time. This is some of the end of the excavation pictures, end of season excavation, where the artifacts were shipped over to the University of Aberdeen for conservation and research purposes. In 2018, they were all brought back to the community of Quinagh, where they are now housed in a purpose-built culture and archaeology center. So this means that they are under the curation of the village itself, and it's directly accessible to the people in the village, not in a remote museum, but there for themselves to engage with and enjoy. Archaeological heritages have played a key role in reinforcing or highlighting to the people here the Yupik identity and create this a type of resilience, cultural resilience among this community, which is very climatically vulnerable. So this here we have an example of where climate change is very near and very real. I'm just going to bring it home in a minute to Europe, because there can be little doubt that all of us, has already entered a state of climate emergency. We are most likely looking forward to yet another summer with record-breaking high temperatures, floods and droughts, water shortages, and extensive wildfire. This has become the new normal. So last night on the news, we heard that California is heading into its worst drought ever, entering the third driest year ever recorded. This will lead to food shortages and problems in communities that have so far been privileged in the way and isolated from these communities. So this distance may be physical, but it's mostly psychological. And a kind of privilege, social privilege, in combination with this kind of looking at the other communities that have been put under climate pressure as victims of this, make climate change seem like an issue for other people, not so much my own responsibility. So bringing it back to Scotland again, Scotland has the second largest coastline in Europe, partly due to a large number of islands situated off the north and west coast of Scotland. So short, close heritage sites like this, Skara Brae, the World Heritage Site that we've already heard about, are directly threatened by the changing climate. And archaeology can be a way of bridging this distance, bridging this idea that this is something that happens somewhere else, and basically localize climate change, make it a matter of concern for people as well as a matter of fact. So climate stories can, from the past and linked to the present, can break down barriers and bring this message home. This is not to be the concern of others. This is our shared reality here and now, and we have to take action that actually has effects if this is to be a little bit less of a catastrophe than what we are now seeing in the kind of pipeline very near future. So thank you.